Are dinosaurs real or imaginary? Go.
Well, Eric DeBay makes a pretty good case for it, and it's something that is up for debate, obviously, because you can't prove it. You weren't alive during that time, so it's like you can't really prove anything for sure. But like the evidence, I think, is definitely against dinosaurs being real. Like there's not really like average people didn't really come across dinosaur bones on their own and stuff. It was only people who had like a vested interest, people who would actually make some kind of money off of it or get fame or something from discovering dinosaur bones. Those are the people who actually found it. And your average like farmer, construction worker, people like that, they didn't come across them ever. And so to me it seems like, I don't know if I can say they ever existed, because there's not really a lot of evidence for them existing besides the supposed dinosaur bones and fossils, which could very easily be fabricated. And so we don't really have any concrete, solid evidence for it. And, you start realizing that about everything. You don't really have any solid evidence for anything like that. Like, the globe earth and stuff, all these things, there's not really solid supporting evidence. There's theories, there's explanations for these theories and whatnot. And, you can debate all you want about it, but when it comes down to it, there's not any concrete evidence.
It's just a lot of speculation.
Precisely. And, I think there's a lot that goes into it. I think even some verses in the Bible, there's a lot of things. David, you have something, you had a verse or something you wanted to bring up.
Yeah. There's one particular chapter in the Bible. It's Job chapter 40, and it talks about this creature called Behemoth, and it pretty much is like saying it eats grass like an ox, and it's like some big creature, and it just from like verses 15 to the end of the chapter, it talks about this interesting creature that some people could interpret to be a dinosaur kind of a creature. I'm not sure if you want me to go through and read all those verses, because there's quite a few. But anyone interested in that, it's Job chapter 40, verses 15 to the end of that chapter. And but a lot of people think it could just be like an elephant or a hippopotamus or various other creatures that could be described could be what this chapter is describing. But other than that, there's not really a whole lot of scriptures that indicate a creature like a dinosaur. Like in the Garden of Eden, you would think that that's like the beginning of creation, right? God created the animals, and in the creation he describes creating fish and fowls and birds and and whales and cattle, but you don't ever hear anything that would sound like a dinosaur. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Well, it does say that like the curse for the serpent, right? Like that tricked Eve in the Garden of Eden. His punishment was to crawl on his belly, right? And so maybe in some way that indicates that they had legs at one point, that serpents were actually walking around on legs and stuff, which could kind of represent a dinosaur, kind of look like a dinosaur. But again, it's like there's not really any concrete evidence for it. You don't see the bones or any of the physical evidence for that.
That just sounds like a lizard to me, though.
Yeah, exactly. It basically is. It's a lizard, and there's obviously all the reptilian stuff in our past, like all the ancient cultures talk about dragons, and serpent beings, and today we hear about the reptilian elite and stuff, and so who knows what all that stuff really is, but I think it might almost be more of a spiritual thing in a way. Like it kind of represents like the serpent wisdom and how the serpent tricked Eve and stuff, and it's like the false promises of the serpent basically.
Well, I feel like I heard somewhere that Satan is referred to as the dragon. And what are dinosaurs like? They're like dragons. And so it could all tie back to that spiritual thing where it's almost kind of like worshiping the devil in a way, with all the science gave us, like, oh, dinosaurs are so great and these interesting creatures, when they could just be kind of closely related to a dragon, which is what like Satan was called, the serpent or that great dragon. So it's pretty interesting.
Or it's more just figurative, it's like the dragon within. Jordan Peterson talks about how there's like, you can't have the gold without the dragon, so maybe it's kind of like if you're a wealthy person, you're going to have a lot of people that are after your money. And so you're kind of like the dragon, and everyone else is all the adventurers that's want to come steal your gold. Now, I just saw a thumbnail on that video that was just like Jordan Peterson, you can't have the gold without the dragon. That's all I saw. And I didn't actually watch the video, so I'm not really 100% sure on what Jordan Peterson means by the gold and the dragon, But it's still interesting because, you can kind of think of it as maybe what they were talking about back in the old days, is just the dragon, like all the zodiacs, that kind of thing. They were more just figurative representations rather than a physical being.
In the New Age and stuff, it's actually more of an ancient concept, I think, but it's obviously been more popularized in the New Age movement, about the Kundalini serpent that lies at the base of the spine. It's like coiled. I think the word Kundalini actually means coiled in I think it's like I forget what's kind of like a Hindu word or something that means coiled. And basically, they say that if you live properly and stuff, if you avoid enervating things like drinking alcohol and various things like that you can raise an oil back up the spine, which is basically represented by the serpent. It's like they say the serpent will kind of coil around your spine, like go around your chakras and activate each chakra as it goes up, and then by the time it gets to your third eye, like the crown chakra, it kind of looks through your third eye, and it kind of takes over you, in a sense. Like you basically are taken over by the serpent, and now you have the wisdom of the serpent. But like I said, the Garden of Eden, it was a serpent that tricked Eve and said that she would have the knowledge of good and evil, basically saying you could be wise like God and stuff. And that was the first lie ever told. So it's very strange, and who knows how that relates to dinosaurs, but I think there could be some connection there.
And like I was saying earlier with the dragon within, maybe that's kind of like man's devil within. It's like a similar representation. We partook of that fruit, and it caused us to take on the idea of sin, and so we are constantly battling with our carnal desires. It's all those things that we see that we want. It's like, well, it's the 7 deadly sins. Pride, lust, greed, all those things that you feel. You want to be able to recognize when you're in that state, and you want to choose the other state, which is the 7 virtues. You want to choose the opposite, because that will continue to lead you on that path to a higher consciousness.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I don't really know much about, I haven't really studied the whole Kundalini thing in depth, but I know that a lot of cultures around the world, they kind of believe in that whole concept of the Kundalini and the Kundalini Awakening, as they call it. And they'll show you people who, it's videos of people who apparently are having a Kundalini Awakening, and they end up being like possessed in a way. They look possessed. They act weird. They make animal noises and stuff. Just do strange things. They have weird jerking motions of the head and stuff. And these are all signs of being opening your third eye, having a Kundalini Awakening. And I think maybe the pineal gland and stuff, that whole idea, I think there's truth to it, because obviously it's an important part of the brain, and it plays a very large part in what makes us human and stuff. But at the same time, I think there's a good way to open it, a good way to activate it, and a bad way to activate it. And I think a lot of these cultures are kind of doing it in a almost like a half-assed kind of way, where they're going about it the wrong way, not really having God on their side when they're doing it, and it messes with them, basically.
Kind of like the light and the dark side. You got the two fighting forces. You can either choose the dark side or you can choose the light.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to simplicity, right? When you go back to all the truth that is kind of being revealed in this day and age, with like the ball Earth not really seeming true, and the dinosaurs and everything. If you look at the Kundalini spirit and everything you're talking about, if you look at the teachings of Christ, they're very simple. And when the people in that time were looking for a Messiah, they wanted someone to come in and destroy the Romans and, take charge. But Christ was very simple. He was born in a manger, and his teachings are very simple. So kind of like how you're saying a lot of these cultures might be doing it the wrong way. Well, like you said, there is probably a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. And the right way is a simple way where it's looking to God for the answers. Whereas these cultures are kind of looking in weird rituals and weird things that kind of could probably be summoning demons and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's pretty interesting to think about.
Yeah, like, I've heard that basically yoga is something that's almost required. If you want to have a Kundalini Awakening, you have to practice yoga. And also along with like a certain kind of diet and whatever. But yoga is a very large part of it. And apparently yoga, like the word itself means to like yoke or to like have like union with something, and basically what you're doing with yoga, you're making poses with your body, and those poses represent like ancient gods. Each pose is like mimicking what a god did or something in some story or whatever. And these gods in ancient times really, I think, are like the Nephilim or demons. They're not things we should aspire to be like or anything. And when you make these poses with your body, you're basically creating a channel from you to whatever demon or god was said to be making that same pose, And so it's the same with like clothing. If you dress a certain way or whatever, if it's similar to what a demon would look like or how they dressed or how they looked, you're creating a channel from you to that thing in the spiritual world. And basically, nowadays there's just so many yoga studios and stuff all over the place. Everyone's trying to get into yoga and do these things, and it's all presented as a very good thing. But really, I think what it is creating all kinds of channels. Now we have a ton of channels to the demonic realm that basically allow more demons to get through. And I'm not saying that if you do yoga you're going to be possessed immediately or something, but like basically you're allowing demons to kind of enter your life somehow. Some demonic influence is going to be able to get through to you and affect you in some way. And when you finally have this Kundalini Awakening, you do look possessed. And like the charismatic movement in the churches, like in the 90s I think it was, and like to this day they're still going on. People would do certain kind of blessings. Like there's like one called the Toronto blessing or something that happened, and basically people started acting all crazy. It was very similar to what the Kundalini Awakenings look like in places where they practice voodoo and stuff. It's the same thing, but happening in North America and other places, but amongst Christians. Supposed Christians are doing these kind of things, and it could be basically allowing more demonic influence to get through without them realizing, basically allowing demons to influence humanity as a whole more than ever before. And it's very strange.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting. I think it all goes back to just being simple and looking to God for answers and not for ourselves. And I think Satan tricks us in ways that we think that we can find out these informations by doing, like I said, rituals, and it extends to Christian churches, to weird Eastern religions, and all kinds of different things. And I think a lot of people are kind of being corrupted to think that the way they can find information is doing physical rituals, like like you said, channels. Well, it's the same thing as someone doing a Ouija board, and trying to talk to a spirit. I'm pretty sure a good spirit wouldn't be talking to someone on a Ouija board, and the spirits that use those are evil. Same with these spiritual awakenings when you're doing weird yoga rituals or weird blessings or weird things that don't really come from God, I think you're always going to be invoking some kind of evil spirit, and you're allowing yourself to kind of be taken over, and you're letting, you're letting yourself become taken over.
Yeah, because isn't that like with the Halloween? You were telling me that one, where they put on the mask at certain times of the year to get it kind of like in connection with certain, not in certain religions, it's like they're trying to get in connection with certain gods or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like Halloween, I mean, itself is like ancient practice, like an ancient holiday, that was basically just satanic from the beginning. It was, involved a lot of sacrifice and stuff like that, like child sacrifice. And yes, but nowadays, we just dress up and stuff. People dress up as scary things, like they wear demonic costumes or, dress up as a devil or something like that. And like yoga, you're making a pose that represents a demon. You're dressing as a demon on Halloween, and during that time, the veil is already thinner. The veil from the physical world to the spiritual world is already thinner, and so when you're dressing as these things, it creates more and more channels for demons to get through, and it's probably even easier for them during that time of the year. And so, yeah, it's probably a huge reason for them pushing that whole idea of dressing up on Halloween and all that. It gives more power to the demonic realm, and yeah, it's pretty scary.
I think the truth is pretty easy to see, like what's good and bad. And I think when the scriptures say in the last days or in the end times, what's good will be looked at as bad, or what's evil will be good and what's good will be evil. And I think we can really see that today with everything going on. If you do things simple and you're just doing basic prayers and you're trying to be the best person you can be, you're looked down upon. And all these things like yoga and all these different practices, people think like, oh, you got to be more spiritual. Don't be religious, just be spiritual. Which I'm not saying that's totally bad, but I just think a lot of people are missing the mark, and they're not really searching the Word of God, like in the scriptures, and really finding out what they should be doing. And they're kind of looking to man and weird practices and rituals that man created, or was probably created by the adversary, the devil, to deceive us. And so we're giving ourselves to those practices and not what the scriptures actually teach us. And so therefore, we're so many are so blinded today to think that what's good is evil and what's evil is good.
Kind of like unguided lambs or guided lambs walking straight into slaughter.
Yeah, it seems people are looking for a shortcut in some way to, receive spiritual enlightenment and whatnot. They want to just already get it without really having to go through the full process of it. And, I think really we're not going to get the true reward until we are in heaven or we're dead, basically. This whole world is like a probationary state, right? We're not supposed to like stay here and want to just constantly live on earth or something. We're supposed to return to the source at some point. And all these practices kind of like are just to help us stay on, improve our physical existence rather than our spiritual existence, which is later.
Yeah, because this is just like a simulation, so that when we get to heaven, then we know what to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, even like in Christian churches and stuff, I see a lot of people make like Facebook posts and stuff like, oh, I paid tithing to my church and I'm gonna get so many blessings on earth and stuff. And like you said, I think in every church right now, I think Satan has convinced people that do good things to get blessings on earth. And if you look at Jesus Christ's life, right, his whole life was perfect and in the service of everybody and in the sacrifice for anyone who allows him to be their savior. And look what happened to him. He wasn't really getting earthly blessings, and he wasn't really getting things that are of this world, but he asked us to take upon our cross and follow him. So like you were saying, it's not about the earthly blessings, but about the blessings after.
Yeah, a lot of Christians, especially like in the Baptist church, like there's a guy named like Pastor Anderson or something. They talk about how all you gotta do is just say this prayer that you believe in Jesus Christ and you accept Him as your Lord and Savior, and then from that point on, you're saved. You're guaranteed to go to heaven after you die because you said that prayer when you're 8 years old. And it doesn't matter if you kill somebody later on in life. It doesn't matter what you do, because you said that prayer when you're 8 years old. You're going to heaven no matter what. And they believe that, and they act like, doing works, having to work for salvation is like a doctrine of demons or something. But how does that sound like a demonic thing at all? It's really like, obviously we're supposed to do good works on earth. That's the whole point, is to be a good person, be compassionate, be a good Samaritan, right? Like, you're not supposed to just be like, oh yeah, I said a prayer when I was 8, I'm good now. I'm not going to try to be better for the rest of my life. I'm just good now.
I think the biggest thing is to realize that we can't be saved without Jesus Christ. Like, we can't save ourselves through our works, but people say, just have faith. Well, faith is an action word. To have faith is to do actions, right? To have faith is to take the next step and to follow Christ, right? Look at all the apostles that were following Christ. They were all killed. And they were all killed defending the truth, right? Did they just say, I believe Jesus is my Savior, and then they just sat in their homes and just went fishing again? You know, they kept preaching and they kept having faith, and they weren't perfect, and because of that, they needed Jesus Christ to save them. But that faith in Jesus Christ wasn't just sitting around not doing anything. It was continually trying to become more like Jesus Christ and following his example.
Yeah, like Pastor Anderson, he was saying basically that if you, as long as you say that prayer when you're 8 years old or whatever, if you say that prayer no matter what time in your life, basically, from that point on, you know you're going to be saved when you die. But he says, if afterwards you were to commit some kind of sin or something, violate God's commandment in any way, that God will punish you on this earth, but in heaven, after you die, you're still going to heaven, But that doesn't really make any sense, because, like I said, Jesus was good his whole life, and look what happened to him, Like, all these righteous people who were good their entire life had basically terrible lives their entire life. And it's because this life is not where we're trying to have treasures in and stuff. We're trying to have treasures in heaven, not here.